Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to see you all back here in the main hall for this closing session. I do hope that you have had a very good conference experience, but as you know, we continually strive at TERENA to improve things, so we very much ask you to fill in the conference evaluation form that was in your bag when you registered. And if you have lost it, there are spare copies of this evaluation form out in the small exhibition area at the TERENA booth or with the conference organizers. Now, when you have filled it in, you should hand it in at the TERENA booth, and you will receive a surprise gift. Now, another small household matter before we go on to the program is to announce that in one of the buses this morning, a mobile phone was found, left behind. It's a Nokia. And I have asked experts who have guided me, and they say it speaks Czech. So if it is one of you in this room who has lost it, it's up here. And if it's not, I'll hand it to Carol de Groot, who will carry it around for the rest of her stay here in Rhodes, so you can get it by approaching the TERENA Secretariat. So please pass the word if it's not one of yourselves. Very good. The problem was solved immediately. Good. So let's turn to the program for this closing session. Our first speaker is Alan Noble, who is the head of adult learning in Buckinghamshire County Council. As you have been able to read on the web or in the program committee thought it proper to end this year's conference with a speech on the developments in the educational sector, where ICT by now is really playing a very important role in many different sectors. Now, where research networks some years ago were really important only for the research going on, today, also in the educational sector as a whole, both at universities and in primary schools, secondary schools, vocational schools, adult learning, ICT is coming into the picture very strongly. And that, of course, poses new challenges. Alan Noble is in charge of a most interesting activity in this area. He has the responsibility for 25,000 students, 3,000 online students, and a staff of 1,000 teachers in 150 different locations. He is a passionate believer in lifelong learning and actively pursuing the policy of utilizing ICT to help widen the participation in learning. So, please welcome Alan Noble.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that welcome, and thank you actually for inviting me to the University of the Aegean to address the research network. Quite daunting for me because my technical expertise is about zero. But what I want to do today is to try and look through some of the aspects and the research that you've done and how we're trying at the grassroots to translate that into what I feel is a most important aspect to society for the future, that of providing an education service which is fit for the 21st century. I am going to talk today about learners, the most important connection, because for me it is that point. It is about how we can address the issues that learners face in their everyday life and give them opportunities, give them accessibility, give them the necessary structures so that they can partake in modern society, which is rapidly transforming itself as we speak. Just before I start, I thought just reflect on some of my views of the conference, some of the things I've picked up as we went through and listening to the plenary sessions. And on Monday, at the opening plenary, Peter led us through the development of the internet, and quite staggering that we're talking of quite a short space of time, 20 years for the development of the internet. And I sat there intently at the back trying to keep up with all this technical knowledge, but when he got to Alice, I thought, was I at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party? But I began actually to think about how we can transform that into the benefits of learners. On Tuesday, we talked about the next killer applications, and Bob Jones took us from research into practical outcomes at very high levels. And then we were led through the layering of the network, from Network 1, Network 2, and I heard whispers around the forum, Network 3 is on its way. And by yesterday, VJ was taking us and showing us open courseware, extending opportunities for academic learning throughout the world on an open access basis. And then Eric took us to the doors of password-protected content and left us at those doors. And let's hope that we can now take down some of those doors and get through the issues that face around the copyright issues, around the digitalisation issues, and really bring it to a benefit to people. In many ways, what has been following this conference mirrors what's necessary in education. Because you as high-level research networks have actually brought to bear in society a huge potential for change. What we need to do is to move that down as it is moving, from the very high-level research into the high-level practical outcomes, from those high-level practical outcomes down into the academic institutions, and then down into the rest of education. And like the network, education is layered itself. Many people in education do achieve good academic standards, but there are huge numbers of people that have no educational qualifications whatsoever. And in a society that is becoming more knowledge-based rather than manufacturing-based, that is becoming global, then what we need to do is equip everybody, not just those that can achieve the academic status, but everybody with opportunities for education, for opportunities for access, for opportunities of social balance, and for opportunities of economic competitiveness. So, from a bit of a UK perspective on this, but I'm sure it does mirror, and remember from a totally non-techie background, I want to take you through today, have a quick look at the overview of UK, and why I feel, and why many people in the UK feel, that ICT is going to be one of the most important vehicles for developing opportunities for people and communities to survive. To have a look about inverting the triangle. How do we make the learner the most important person? How do we put the learner at the centre? How do we bring them opportunities of personalised learning? Because you've developed the technology for that, the practitioners on the ground need to try and put that into place. To have a look at some changing roles, the challenges that we face and the challenges that I think you will help us solve. Have a look at some of the key issues, and then perhaps take you through, if I have time, a very quick work that we've been doing around smart card development and personalised learning. So if we put this into some context of globalisation, globalisation is not just about the huge manufacturing industries and their ability to transform countries by moving bases from one to another where it's cheaper. Globalisation affects everybody. It affects the individual, it affects the small shopkeeper, it affects the person who's living in the street next door, because the impact of technology means that the world has an open access both to good, to bad, but an open access also to the ability to purchase on the internet, the ability to actually bring down prices, buy in places you've never thought of buying before, and securing a different lifestyle. We have moved in the UK to a knowledge-based economy. Large decrease in manufacturing, and we're based around many what we call the small medium enterprises. Those that employ less than 250 people, those that actually employ perhaps 8 or 9 or 10 people. They have to keep up because their competitors are not in the village next door, they're not in the town next door, they're not on the business park next door. Their competitors can now be anywhere in the world. And we are undergoing one of the fastest revolutions that man has ever been through. Actually, it's said that the technological revolution that we're now going through is probably having the most impact that man has ever had on it in such a short space of time. Equivalent impacts, or so historians tell us, was the Great Plague, which wiped out a huge amount of the community in terms of those that were normally producing, developing, and keeping communities going, and the First World War, which again decimated, I suppose, and changed the way society thought itself. Our technical revolution is happening in such a short space of time. The 20 years of the internet, and now, if you think of it, how many people in the world are connected through that. The ability to talk to anybody in the world from any place. The transformation of the mobile phone from that which was developed for voice to which is now used increasingly for developing text messaging, and increasingly in a language which has never been taught in schools, in a language which has never been written down, but a language which many peer groups understand. And then we're into the new concept of working. Because if we want to upskill people in the workplace, then traditionally one's thought of either taking them out the workplace, or traditionally they could come on X, Y, or Z to a 1-day, 2-day, 3-evening, full-week course. But in the UK, the CBI, our Confederation of British Industry, will tell us that by the next 4 years' time, 65% of our workforce will not be in a standard 9-till-5 job. They will be in a job which is mobile, they will be in a job which might be for 2 or 3 different people, they will not be working regular hours from 9 till 5. That in itself must have a major impact on the way that we deliver education, the way that we upskill our communities, and the way in particular that we as educationalists must package the product that we deliver. And then there's social change. And the big danger in this, which actually was mentioned in this morning's plenary in a slightly different way, is the development of the digital divide, and I'll just pick that up a bit later. But unless we equip everybody in our community to have access to the knowledge, to have access to all of the benefits that technology can bring us, then we are creating yet another underclass. We're creating people who will be under increased social pressure. And in the UK, the government is putting everything online by 2005, which is great, which means a lot. But if you can't access the internet, if you don't know how to use the internet, then you're being removed from opportunities which existed prior to that. In the UK, we've got 7 million people lacking essential skills. We have 7 million workers actually in the workplace with not a single educational qualification. We have 21 million people in the workplace who only have an educational level of the 16-year-old, what we call our level 2 education. And we have 1 in 3 employers now telling us that we face a major skill gap. Not a skill gap from those coming into the workplace, but a skill gap of those in the workplace. If businesses are going to remain competitive, if we're going to keep a successful economy, we've got to upskill existing workforces. And if you actually look at that and you think of that in terms of a public limited company, UK PLC, you could see unless there is radical change, it will go bankrupt very quickly. If we also look at learners and what learning is to individual people, then we can see that the professional management, and I think it's the same in most organisations, they're the ones that are well educated and they get more education and they get more money spent on them. And if we look at the unskilled workers, we will find that a higher percentage, as much as 50% of those, do not have any learning as part of their normal everyday place in terms of their jobs. If we actually look at the money that's been invested in the UK universities, and we look at the differential between the professionals and the working class, then we'll find in the 90s, between 1996, there's been a huge increase in the numbers in universities. Most of that, in fact all of that's taken with the traditional professional, what we're calling middle class families, with their children going to university. we have made a very limited impact in widening participation. We've increased it, we haven't widened it. We've actually created opportunities for those who have had the opportunities, for those that perhaps education hasn't been meaningful to them, they haven't succeeded in their first round, we haven't actually widened that opportunity. And this is research that's just come out about learning and internet access. And what it was is a major national survey talking to people about their views on education. Is it positive, is it negative? Will they be engaged in it in the future? Those with no access to the internet, either at work or at home, actually showed that over 70% of those didn't see education as being a benefit to them or having any relevance in the future. When you get to people with fixed access, under this any access, in terms of a desktop or a notebook or something at work, then you'll actually find that decreases to about 40%, and those that are both current learners and future learners grows up. If you actually look at somebody who feels they're really connected and they have mobile technology and it's all interlinked, then actually you can see the huge amount of potential there in terms of future learning. The potential there is over 70% of those people who see themselves fully networked will actually feel that education will be a positive part of their life in the future. I think this just sums up the way that the learning really has to change. That traditionally, we had simple training that lasted most of the workplace. But in the heat of competition and change, then this knowledge rapidly evaporates. And what we need to do is to provide learning continually on tap. It can't be fixed points in time, it can't be fixed points in life, it has to be at the times and the places when the learner and the individual finds it most appropriate. And if we look at the affordability of what is a necessity, remember, we've got to educate the workforce, then we can see that although funds will probably slightly go up and go on an upward curve still, but the need for learning far outstrips that. So traditional learning is not going to be able to satisfy in terms of cost, in terms of the GDP that's spent into the education. It's not going to be able to satisfy that need for learning, the need for learning from the individuals, the need for learning from society itself. So, if we look at perhaps a traditional teaching where we've got the management sitting at the top and passing resources and teaching down, and eventually it reaches the learner at the bottom, that probably is still a traditional way that most institutions structure themselves. But remember, in society now, where people see themselves quite differently, they see themselves as individuals with 24/7 access, they see themselves in a way recognised by a whole variety of other institutions, we perhaps need to think about how we change that round. And if we actually empower the learner and the teachers to communicate, we empower the learner to look at resources that might not be in the institution, we actually put the management and the learner on a communication base, and we link all of those up, we actually will find that we can deliver more learning, more effective learning, more personalised learning in ways that the internet and ICT in particular will allow us. It removes the need for the walls, doesn't remove the need for teaching. I do not advocate the fact that teachers will be redundant, but it does mean we can supplement teaching. It does mean we can bring in resources. And if I look around this room today, or I've looked around it several times, then this in some ways is the classroom of the future. I mean, I suspect if we really analyse what's on these laptops now, people are connected up to about 56 different points in the world. It's about bringing resources in. A nice wireless and active classroom. The ability for people to dip in and out of what's going on is very important. So it is a matter of us making and trying to put the learner at the heart of what we do. I mentioned the divide, and we know what the traditional divides are, the illiterate, the younger, skilled, disabled, black, poor, white. I mean, these are divides that we actually know about. But the new divide is really about the digital era. It's about information-rich and information-poor, techno-rich and techno-poor, knowledge-poor, information poor, knowledge rich. We've got to look at all of these aspects and see how we can remove those so that everybody has the opportunities that can be brought to them in terms of digital technology. So what are the barriers to learning? And I'm talking here not about those that have succeeded in learning. I'm talking about those where perhaps the only educational experience has been one of failure. They haven't managed to achieve their potential. They haven't managed for the schools or for their further studies to have achieved potential. And we did some research amongst non-learners, people who have no educational qualifications, had left school as a failure, didn't see education had anything to offer them. And we got some interesting things, that they can't commit to regular sessions, they were told they were a failure, their image about their self and their institutions, the image about the institution as being the kind of the horrible power that said to them, you can't do this. The image about their self they couldn't achieve. They didn't have the self-esteem, the self-drive that's often necessary in education. They can't travel. It's fine for us to have wonderful gleaming institutions, but if people can't travel, then we have to rethink about what we do. They weren't treated as an individual. They were a cohort amongst 30 others, amongst 20 others, but they weren't actually treated as that individual. And if you begin to think of the work that you're doing in the research networks and the ability that all of the new developments bring, then that individuality, to me, must be one of the prime drivers. And then, of course, people were seen as difficult because they wanted to learn in a different way. They weren't happy that a tutor was standing at the front and lecturing to them or teaching them or bookwork. It wasn't their most appropriate way of learning, but of course, in 32 others, they had to do it. If I look at adult learning nationally in the UK, we've got about 1.6 million learners, 44,000 staff, 150 local authorities, and different styles of delivery. Some of them deliver directly, others contract out. The grey bit in the middle is where I normally work when I'm there, and that's Buckinghamshire. And this is kind of the mission that we've set ourselves, and it's the mission where I think and why at the heart of all of my developments, ICT is very much to the fore. It's about delivering in the heart of the community, high quality, innovative learning opportunities that meet individual, social and economic needs of people within Buckinghamshire and the wider community. I talk about being within pram-pushing distance, because if you're actually dealing with real people that have constraints, especially around childcare, and they want to be involved in learning, then it's no use expecting them to travel long ways. So what we try and do is think how we can bring in different ways and utilise technology to deliver in the heart of the community local education opportunities for people. Well, we've gone through all of this, but we've opened up new centres, and what I want to do now is perhaps put some real people to your attention. This is just our market town in Aylesbury, gives you an indication of that. This is some of our learning centres that we have. Some of them are old-fashioned, some of them are brand new, some of them are from kind of a long time ago residential centres. But it means that we're not in a single institution. It means we are spread out, and therefore the technology for us has been, you know, an incredible burden of trying to make it work. We use other people's places, and these, to me, are the most important people. It's the learner, it's the individual, it's the person who perhaps for the first time is striving to achieve more than they've achieved before. And it's about a wide range of ages. And so, really, I suppose the role we see ourselves now in terms of education is providing new opportunities, providing ways for people to learn, make themselves suitable for living in the 21st century, for that e-economy, for that drive that's so necessary. I mean, I put lots of pictures in because your focus, to me, at the end of all your research, you must think about what's it going to do to the learner at the end. And I think that's absolutely vital, and I hope you will at least take that away with you. We actually provide in retail stores and community centres, we deliver in railway stations, schools, homes, pubs, clubs and companies, ICT learning centres and libraries. We don't have, as I've said before, nice buildings. We have a few of our own buildings, but we deliver in lots of different locations. We deliver in the mosque on the left, in the sports centre on the right. That's the mosque. And believe it or not, this isn't where we do our shopping, because in here we actually deliver learning. This is inside a large Sainsbury's store in Buckinghamshire, where in fact learning is delivered as an integral part of the retail business that's going on in the shopping centre. So, let me talk about some of the challenges that are for you. I think deployment is a major challenge. We've got 10 major centres, and I put in a managed learning environment, and trying to get that to work in real time with huge amount of staff training has been a very interesting challenge. It has to be accessed securely via the internet. If it's only available in the 10 centres, then I've failed in my mission. I've failed in giving people real access to it in real time, and so we've got to make it securely accessible via the internet. And I've got staff and students deployed over 150 locations. And of course, with modern technology and modern costs, there isn't hope that I'm going to wire all those 150 up. So we've got to look at remote solutions. We've got to look at solutions which maybe work onto laptops and then can be updated when they're logged in at other locations. And this is the biggest challenge. How do I transform 900 staff? Staff that traditionally have always seen their role as being the deliverer of classroom-based learning. Because to them that's safe, to them it's secure, to them in the past it's been fine. And we've attracted an audience. But to widen that audience, we've got to change the way we do things. And so I've also got the task of trying to train staff. So not only do they understand the rationale behind the investment that we've made, but they really begin to get to grips with how they can bring another tool into the classroom, to add diversity, to add excitement, to bring in to our programmes new opportunities for learners. When I went to my head of IT and said I want 25,000 plus email accounts, he nearly fell over, because he actually said, well, as Buckinghamshire County Council, we've only got 4,500, 5,000 of our staff on email. How can you want 25,000? I said, I want 25,000 because I want my students to have the access. I want them to have the right to communicate to my tutors. I want them to be empowered in that communication as well. And we've now managed through TERENA and Shirley to actually work that up, and we're running out kind of a pilot to ensure that we do get opportunities for developing that. And then we've increasingly found that the best communication tool across our organisation is the web. And we've developed now a virtual staff room. We've developed opportunities for our learners so they can access a lot of information via the web. But again, in remote communities, we've got to make sure access is right, access is easy, and we don't want to put large barriers in the way of individuals. So, this was just looking at connectivity and all the issues which I originally faced, and I thought, well, this is very difficult for me. I'm not techie. How do I join up my own centres and other people's centres? And if I wanted to get Janet joined up, where do I actually put the academic backbone into the organisation? Because me as a non-technical person didn't really understand it. I still don't. But we've now managed, with the help and advice of TERENA, to actually ensure that we connect our centres up. But that, to me, is the easy bit. That, to me, has already been done, because you, as the research network, have enabled us to do that. What I think is becoming more and more difficult is, when I get through my learners, I'm sorry I put so many learners in slides, but I thought you might like to see all the different learners that we have in Buckinghamshire, is how do we actually get all of this joined up? How do we actually get the individual sitting at home in front of the television, and remember digital television is going to be a big player, how are we going to get our communications logged up so it becomes seamless? And if you go back to that slide that I said when we began to interview people, or nationally interviewed people, about those with real integrated mobile access. How do we actually deliver education through this? This, to me, is going to be the challenge. It's not going to be the challenge of hard wiring. It's going to be really the challenge of making sure that we have appropriate individual access, appropriate to the individual at that point in time. They don't have to travel to an institution. They don't have to necessarily travel to a place that's logged on. I mean, the increasing use of wireless in communities. What we need to do is harness that so that we can really begin to use that and deliver to the individuals. We have big issues about wide area networks and the remote and secure accesses. Effective use of technology for management. I mean, we really have moved to a stage now where hopefully we've got real-time information about what's going on in the classrooms. We actually don't pay our tutors anymore unless they mark the register electronically. And therefore we do know, in theory, what's going on in the classroom. And that's really given us some good management information. So it's that linking up of management and linking up of teaching and learning that's so important. We have big issues about hosting. Where do you best host all of this stuff? If you host it inside a secure local authority environment, then you have big firewall problems. So do you host it out with a commercial organisation? Do you host it out in different ways? I mean, these are some of the issues I've yet to face. And websites. How do you ensure that the website becomes an holistic website? There's dozens and hundreds of websites growing every day. And in the learning community, actually, if you put learning in Google, you'll get something like about 1 million actually will come up of learning communities. What we've got to do is to make sure that we have an effective route in so that people can easily access information that's necessary. And what I want to do in my last five minutes is actually talk about what we've done in terms of building a learning community using smart card technology. This actually, I mean, I understand nothing about smart cards, so don't ask me. But I was in Italy on holiday about 3 years ago, and I wanted to get internet access. And I went into this little internet cafe and said, could I have access? Oh, yes, he said, how long do you want? I said, I want it for 2 or 3 days. He said, well, why don't you have one of these? He said, and then you can use it in any place in the community, you know, that's on our circuit. He said, you can go in and just push it in and you're logged in automatically to the internet. And I thought that was great. So I sat there by the pool in the marquee thinking, how do we translate that into learners? Wouldn't it be wonderful if learners could have that card and go into any place that they could log it into and get to their individual learning, get to their patterns of learning, develop their own learning. And what we've tried to do is move that process on in Buckinghamshire. We actually wanted to create a virtual learning community. And we particularly chose areas where of less social advantage, where there wasn't evidence of high academic success amongst the community members, where there was higher unemployment, where there was a greater ethnicity issues in terms of the local community. We wanted to make sure that we listened to the learner, and listening to the learner, I think, is one of the most important things that we could do. And more importantly, we wanted to give people something back for going through learning. If we as communities need people to learn, and in the past we failed them, then they might quite justifiably say, what's the payback, what's the bottom line? So we've built in kind of a loyalty card system to this. We've built in a system where people actually can earn points for learning, earn points for going through various stages of learning, and in the end get real cash back for it. And it also became a very important tool for managing the learning process. So we wanted to give the learner choice, accessibility, and ownership. The learner, the choice, the accessibility, and the ownership. Not up to us when we open the institutions, not up to us telling people what they could do, but really empower the individual to learn. We wanted to give managed access so that it was quite easy if somebody came in and they could put their smart card into a smart card reader, and wham, they could get to their educational resources. And we wanted to get away from the bureaucracy of learners having to fill in dozens of forms for different funding agencies. And because we're multi-funded, we will be funded from Europe, we're funded from the Learning and Skills Council, we're funded from our local agencies. All of these people require different returns, different pieces of paper, and learners get fed up with it. We wanted to give people management of their individual learning plans and associated actions. And most importantly, in this first phase, we wanted this entitlement points to actually be registered on the card. Loyalty cards are big in the commercial world. We are beginning to try them out in the education world. And we wanted it to be a single login, irrespective of whether it's a login directly into a smart card reader or through the smart card number itself through the internet. I don't understand this, but my technicians tell me that it's an XML transaction server, and we've got client software and the smart card data storage. Important for us that it was an e-pursed card. Important for us we could have two-way communication to it. Important for us we could load it up with money for businesses for training or for points for individuals for actually going through training. So we wanted it to become a marketing tool as much as a tool really for just recording data. So that two-way communication to us was very important. That purely shows, I assume, that it's pretty safe. We've trialled it with 2,000 learners. We have feedback from learners who's very positive. Mostly, the power of this is it seems to be that learners enjoy the ownership of their own card. That's been very important. The feedback about having that individual access, that individual power to be able to control their own learning has been very important. And we've developed through new opportunities in local communities, we've got away from all of this hassle of filling in forms a long way away. As I said, our initial trial was 2,000 learners. We had about 1 million data rows. I'm not quite sure what we did with them, but we collected them. But our new version, and this is what's just been launched in the last 3 weeks, it is now an electronic individual learning plan. It builds into an individual's electronic lifelong learning record, the achievement with online support processes, so they can both get support from face-to-face tutors or from tutors outside. They can actually upload content to it. It gives data sharing between projects, and the self-registration allows anywhere, anytime processing of new learners. And we particularly tried to concentrate on areas where people are visually impaired or disabled, so we've built in some audio navigation. So we now get individuals who will get into their learner portals. The little wizard there will talk them through the registration process, and they just go through a standard, fairly easy self-registration process. Again, this can be updated because it's a permanent database, so they can get it updated, and we actually burn the card at the point. The learner portal, which is what they get into, allows them to join various activities. And these are not joining a course, they're joining a community. So the business community will be able to join a community design, particularly for businesses. And within that, it'll take them through to online courses for their business. It'll take them through into Project Secure through Europe. We'll have a look at the Learning at the Smarter Cafe, which is about people who are just coming back into learning for the first time. People where learning has not meant a lot to them, but is beginning to mean a lot. And so this is the type of screen they get. And on the left-hand side, you can see they can begin to build up their bonus points as they go on. And this itself does have a big impact. It does actually help us in terms of making sure we get achievement, but it also helps in ensuring that the learners do get a positive outcome to the learning. Gives them updated information on where they can do things, when the opening times are, and we give everybody this individual webmail. And that's been very important. Quite challenging, but at least it's been an interesting time to get that in place. The individual learning plans are built up and stored in the lifelong learning record, and this can automatically be produced by the learner when they join a scheme or move on to a new project. And the entitlement points can be either time indexed or they can be level entitlement points, and they need verification. So you get learner agreement, tutor agreement, and a virtual tutor if necessary. Some of the areas of work can be mandatory, others can be at choice. Learners can also build into their learning plan individual targets that they wish to achieve. It's also a means of communication, and we've built into it text messaging, so we can now actually give a direct text message to people, reminding them that they should be doing X, Y, or Z, or that their assignments are due in. But we haven't finished yet. We're still actually moving on, and we just see this as one way of actually getting back to engaging our new learners. And I know at the start of when I was asked to do this, Shirley said it's food for thought for people leaving the conference. This actually came to me from somebody in Japan, actually, and I thought it's a very pertinent statement for the conference. Learning is a lifelong process, which is proof that we are living with seeking our endless potentiality. You, as the research networking, can help people achieve their potentiality. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Alan, and I must say you did go fast through your 60 slides. So we actually would have 5 minutes or so for questions if there are some of the things that you went over very quickly that elicits response or comments. Yes, we have a question up here.
Alan, I think we can all commend your efforts to address the problems that so many people face after having experienced years of failure in school. But I'm curious as to whether there's anything we can do to address the underlying problem, which is that so many people in the Western world seem to manage to go through 11 years of schooling and emerge at the end illiterate, innumerate, often unable even to speak properly to one another. Much of what you're doing is trying to rectify these problems after they have occurred, but wouldn't it be better if we could address the problem at source and at least try and equip people with the very basic skills so that maybe they can participate in lifelong learning at a higher level initially?
Yeah, an excellent question. I can actually say and put my hand up and say, I don't deal with schools. I won't say that. I do believe there is an issue. And if you actually look across Europe itself, then there's many different results of actually looking at the analysis of the people with literacy or numeracy skills. In the UK, it's quite high. I mean, we run about 11% of people with low levels of literacy and 25% with lower levels of numeracy. I was in Prague last week with a group, and they were running about 3%. I don't know the answer. I think if we did know the answer, we would solve a lot of the issues. I think some of the answers might lie in this individual way of dealing with learners and being able to treat people as individuals. And I'm absolutely convinced that that's where technology will come to the fore. The ability for us to actually enable people to have their own personal learning, for the issues to be addressed, for that to be recorded simply and personally to them, should go right the way through the whole of their school life. And I believe with technology we can begin to address the issues. Technology isn't the only answer, though. I think there must be answers about structures. There must be answers about the way that education is often viewed by parents. Because parents have a negative experience of education, then you will find that impacts on their children. And education ain't for them either.
What you're possibly doing for the adults in your programme could well benefit their own children in terms of their very early schooling and educational experiences.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of our drivers, is actually trying to raise the self-esteem of communities. I mean, I have my kind of vision that I would like not being able to read a bedtime story to your child to be as negative as drinking and driving. I really think it's got to become down to that. It's got to become a generational issue, but it's got to become down to the fact that the parents and the children need to work together to achieve.
Yes, there's one more. I think we have time for that.
Thank you for your presentation. This is one, yes. Thank you for your presentation. You didn't actually say how successful the program has been in relation to the number of learners that wouldn't have been exposed to IT technology before. Were you able to identify good learning programs that you could put them through? How did they relate to that? Was there large dropout rates? Those sorts of issues, as against the technical infrastructural issues.
Yeah, I mean, all of the learners on our pilot scheme were people that hadn't engaged in any type of learning for a minimum of 5 years. They had very little knowledge or understanding of the internet, and therefore it's from that very basic. We have found in our essential skills, our literacy and numeracy provision, where we've developed this, that the achievement rate has gone up from 65 to 87%, and people are actually, and you know, I'm not putting it just down to entitlement points, I'm putting it down to the fact that people can see they can achieve something in fairly short spaces of time. And that's the critical thing about individual learning plans. It's important for them to be seen as points that people can reach fairly quickly. There's a quick buyback initially. Once you get people into education, once you get people re-engaged, then it does become that drug. It does become that thing where people want to continually drive and strive forward. But getting them to that point means you've got to recognise the need for them to see fairly quick paybacks. But certainly what we're finding is the diversity, opportunities are changing the demography and profile of our learners. Our learner profile has changed, very much attracting more the kind of the 25s to 35s, 40s now, whereas traditionally in adult learning they would have been a much older age.
Well, thank you very much, Alan, for an excellent speech. And now we are going on with the closing program. We have as our next speaker Shirley Wood, who is the Customer Support Director of TERENA. And Shirley, as I think many of you know, is also the Vice President for conferences with TERENA. She has been very active in research networking for more years than most of us in this room. I didn't say all, but most. And I dare say that her impressive knowledge of the field and its actors makes her the ideal person to form every year a really good program committee and to keep a clear overview of the way the conference planning proceeds. So please all welcome Shirley Wood.
Thank you, Dorte, and it's still good morning to you all, and it's nice to see you all here. We've come to the end of the 20th European Networking Conference. It's been an excellent conference, especially in the wonderful surroundings of Rhodes. And the University of the Aegean has been a lovely venue to hold a networking conference. It's encouraged us all to network amongst each other as well. Last night, GRNet organised the conference dinner and took us to a more remote location of the island, where we had the barbecue and finished up the evening with the wonderful light show. And I understand that the dancing went on till gone midnight, and there are some interesting videos of the TERENA General Secretary dancing. I don't think we're going to be showing those. The aims of our conference. It's an annual conference and it's the main opportunity of discussion with our community. It is very important to us and I hope you find it very useful. The participants, they're the national networks and their developers. The users of the national networks, and I sometimes think we need more of those. Our international colleagues, the people here from Internet2, from Japan, from Nigeria. If you look at the delegates list, there seem to be people from nearly all over the world. And also the people from industry. We have sponsors from various parts of industry here. And just as importantly, the policy makers and government representatives. This year we've had a very good programme. The feedback I've had from delegates I've spoken to says that they appreciate the varied programme and the quality of the talks. We called it One Step Ahead because we believed that at the time Europe is one step ahead of the rest of the world. We've seen talks on rollout, optical, monitoring, e-learning, security, middleware and upperware. I think we invented that term in our meeting in January, but we didn't expect it to stick. We've also heard about the grid. We've had an update on what's going on there and some of the greedy applications that we hope will use the bandwidth that we have available, and also about the research infrastructures. We've heard about new technologies, optical networks, mobile, the last mile, which will hopefully help Alan Noble get to all his learners, VPN, quality of service, voice and video. And that was very good because there we launched the Voice over IP cookbook. And if you haven't got a copy of the orange book, then please go and collect one from the TERENA stand. And we've also heard about streaming media. So who was responsible for this excellent programme? These are the people, and they were chaired by Professor David Chadwick from the University of Salford, who was a very able chair, and we all got nagged by Carol de Groot when we always forgot to keep to timescales. You've seen us this year using a different system, which has been developed by the people at TERENA, called CORE, and that's enabled us, as the programme committee, to keep track of what is going on, and also to make life easier for the speakers. They can upload their talks when it's convenient to them. They can put their CVs there. They can upload their papers. So I think we have to say thank you very much to the programme committee. We also have to say thanks to our sponsors. The list is there. One of the main sponsors for connectivity was OTE Business, and they've been responsible for upgrading the bandwidth into the island of Rhodes. Our two main sponsors were Cisco Systems and Logicalis, and we have to say thank you all to all of them. And I hope they found it a very worthwhile experience and a very enjoyable experience coming to the island of Rhodes. So thank you to all of them. On behalf of the conference, I would like to thank our speakers. Without them, we wouldn't have a conference. I know what a lot of effort they put into the conference, the presentations, and for some of them who aren't native English speakers, it can be quite daunting. And they do put me to shame when I think I just couldn't stand up a conference and speak in Greek, Polish, whatever. So I do understand how much effort they put in. We should also thank the plenary speakers of Peter Kirstein, Bob Jones, Jaap van Til, Vijay Kumar, Eric Hauser and Alan Noble. They've all given excellent talks. So thank you very much to the speakers and also the session chairs. They've been very helpful in chasing their speakers, making sure they're there on time and helping them with any little issues they've got. So thank you to all of them. I have to thank our host, Gianet, for hosting the conference. And can I ask Dimitra Kotsakalia to come and accept a bouquet on behalf of Gianet? And we mustn't forget the technical staff of Gianet. They've done a great job in the provision of wireless, which has enabled all of us to sit outside in the sunshine and deal with our email, keeping contact with people back at base. And just as importantly, they've also provided us with lots of power sockets so that we've always got somewhere to charge our laptops. So can I ask Thanasis Liakopoulos to collect the flowers on behalf of the technical support staff from Gianet? Is he here? They're looking for him. Ah. All right. And And we mustn't forget the University of the Aegean. Their staff have worked very hard in preparing for the conference. And again, I'd like Theoloros Sigaros to come up and collect some flowers on behalf of his staff. Is he here? Yes, he is. I'd also like to thank Harara Vasilopoulou from TERENA, who've done all the hard work with providing the conference support, making sure the coaches are there, making sure you've got your hotel bookings sorted out. So is Harara there? She should be. Yes, she's coming forward. And also the TERENA staff. We mustn't forget how much effort they put in to organising these conferences. It's not just 12 months of hard work, it's even more than that. They started organising next year's conference quite a while ago. And one of the people that's very important, especially to the programme committee, and keeps us all on track, I've already mentioned her once, but we mustn't forget Cara de Groot. Before we leave Rhodes, I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the conference to wish Greece well in hosting the Olympic Games 2004, and I hope everyone coming to it thoroughly enjoys themselves. Now that's the end of the thank yous for this year's conference, but I'd like to move on to next year's conference. We've already chosen the programme committee for the 2005 conference. It's going to be chaired by Olivier Martin from CERN, and I'm sure he's going to do an excellent job. The members of the programme committee are listed, and when they came out this week, we already told them that they had an initial meeting to start discussing the programme. So they've actually started work. And I look forward to seeing you next year at the 21st conference. So European networking conferences will have come of age, and it's going to be held in Poznan in Poland on the 6th to 9th of June. I look forward to seeing you then.
So thank you very much, Shirley. And now that we have heard that the next conference is going to be in Poznan, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome our last speaker today, Professor Jan Veglaš, who is the director of the Poznan Supercomputing and Networking Center. Jan Veglaš has been a key figure in the recent impressive development in the past few years in Polish research networking. And I believe he has also been the driving force behind the Polish offer of hosting next year's TNC. He will now give us a first impression of what to expect.
Thank you, Mrs. President, ladies and gentlemen. In the name of local organizers of the next TERENA conference, it is my great pleasure and honor to invite you very warmly to Poznan, Poland. Of course, Poznan is not Rhodes. You mean what I think, but it is also not so unattractive place as you could expect or you could think. And I will try to convince you in my few minutes presentation, ending with a short movie, that it is really the fact. Well, first of all, some basic facts about the city, which is of over 1,000 years of history, formally from the location 750, but goes more deeply into the past, to the very beginnings of Poland as a state. It was a region and the city of crucial importance for the beginning of Poland. It was, among others, the first bishop site in Poland, and also, together with Gniezno, the first capital of the state. Now it's a Great Poland province capital with a population roughly 600,000. It's the city with the longest international fair tradition in Poland, and of course one of the biggest research and education centers with over 120,000 of students. Well, it's a city of culture, having 450 registered monuments, including very unique ones as the oldest Polish cathedral, with tombs of our first kings, a famous Renaissance town hall, considered as the most beautiful to the north of Alps. Of course, extensive choice of museums, theaters, and so on. But what is worth to mention is that the city is surrounded by natural forests, lakes, and other natural curiosities, such as a very famous arboretum of the Polish Academy of Sciences in Kurnik, and the largest oak trees park in Europe, in Orgali. Of course, there are also several castles near to Poznan, and in some of these places we plan to organize social events during our conference. Well, last but not least, Poznan is a site of the Poznan Supercomputing and Networking Center, PSNC in short, which, as you certainly know, is an operator of the Polish National Research and Education Network, now migrating to the Polish optical network, pioneer or pioneer if you prefer. You can see, and some of them were already at the opening of the first part of this network last October. Of course, it is also a very active research and development center for new generation networks, grids, and portals, pretty active international cooperation, and taking part in many international projects, especially within the 5th and the 6th framework program of EC, but not only. Well, a few words about communications. The city is easily reachable by different communication means. First of all, it has an international airport with an increasing number of connections. At the moment, you can reach the city from several capitals, namely from Brussels, Copenhagen, London, Vienna, also from some cities in Germany, Frankfurt, Munich, Cologne, Bonn. And of course, you can also fly to Warsaw and either fly to Poznan, or you can take a train which starts every hour, in fact, and takes 2 hours and a half to reach the city. Another possibility is also Berlin, because the city is located more or less exactly in the middle between Berlin and Warsaw. So 300 kilometers from Berlin, you can also take a train or a car if you wish. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I will pass to a short movie I announced at the beginning, I would like to comment maybe the last part of this movie, which will show you the venue of the conference. The venue, it is a new building of the Poznan University of Technology, which is at the moment under construction, but will be open in October by the President of Poland as one of the most representative modern buildings, university buildings in the country. It is located in the historic part of the city, near to Warta River, with a marvelous view through the river into the cathedral and the town hall, so you will almost touch these monuments during your conference days. So, in short, ladies and gentlemen, in the name of my colleagues from Poznan, from both the PSNC and the Institute of Computing Science, Poznan University of Technology, and also in the name of the whole Polish networking community, I can assure you that those of you who will decide to visit, to attend the next TERENA conference, will be positively surprised in a number of directions. So, ladies and gentlemen, I end with saying see you in Poznan next June. Thank you for your attention. Now the movie comes. Okay.
thank you very much for this nice introduction to Poznan. Now we have some idea of what the city can offer, and as Shirley has already told you, the program committee is already in place and working. And with all the lively discussions and activities going on at this conference, I feel personally convinced that there will be very many topics that can also next year be really interesting for you to come to the TNC and discuss and hear about. Now, before finally letting you go, I have to remind you once more, because we really are very keen on this, to hand in your evaluation form at the Dianet booth. And before you stand up, I have promised, you know, TERENA is an association that likes to do a lot for its members. And as Shirley said, the TNC, the TERENA Networking Conference, of course, is the one big annual event where we all get together, the major event. But of course, in between TERENA conferences, other things go on in the community. Some of them organized by TERENA, some of them organized by our members. And I have promised 60 seconds to Lars Skogan from Uninet, who wants to very, very shortly announce the next NordUnet conference, which is taking place very, very far north as you can get in Norway. And some of you may have received during the conference a small postcard with polar bears. And it's not a fake. I mean, there are polar bears where this conference will take place, hopefully not in the conference hall, but outside. So now we'll see if Lars can actually live up to his promise of 60 seconds. This is a little bit improvised, as you can see, but okay, Lars, the word is yours.
Here we are. Yes, thank you, Dorte. I'm going to use about 55 seconds because I was promised 60 and we deliver. Before we convene in Poznan, we're all going to meet in Svalbard in April. Probably meet that guy as well. Svalbard, in the last year, we've laid a cable along the seabed from the mainland of Norway up to Svalbard, actually two of them parallel, which is about 1,400 kilometers each, or about 900 miles for those of you who don't subscribe to the metric system. And we're delivering 1 gigabit capacity up to about 290 students, and I think that's about the highest capacity per student in the entire world. With a lot of help from NASA and Norwegian Space Agency. There will be lectures, of course. We need to have some sort of program. There are already, a program committee has already laid out a sketch of the program, and in 2 weeks we'll have that program on the web, I think. Invited speakers from all over the world. I'm guessing some of you people are here in the crowd today. But of course, there will also be a social program, because when you're in Svalbard, the opportunities are pretty much endless. Crossing the fjord ice on a high-speed snow scooter, sledge rides, Greenland dogs, and these signs, watch out for polar bears, applies for all of Svalbard. That's what it says in that sign. They're all over the island. This is a shot by day. It's not a very big city. It's virtually impossible to get lost. And you won't stumble around in the dark, because even in April, it's pretty much light 24 hours a day. So if you should wake up at around 3 a.m., it'll probably look something like this. So that's pretty much it. Those of you who have gotten the cards that we've tried to pester you with, you've already noticed the web address, www.norgenet2005.no, and in about a couple of weeks we'll have the program on the web. So figure out a way to get there. We'll have direct flights from Oslo and probably from Tromsø, and the communication to Oslo and Tromsø should be very easy for all of you. So welcome, and we'll see you there.
So finally, let me just say thank you to all of you for attending this conference. It has been very, very nice to see so many people here in Rhodes. It's been really enjoyable to see all the activity, all the discussions going on. And for those of you who are not staying on for the Cisco or the middleware seminar or the GA meeting, please have a safe journey home.